I expected Death Stranding 2 on the beach to be good, maybe even great. Bombastic graphics, mind-bending story beats connected by a mundane walkabout whatever landmass the story were to take place. I thought I knew what we were all in for. A pretty polished game with technically sound but somewhat boring gameplay that certainly, with the exception of Kojima fanboy Jeff Keighley's show, was not a real contender for Game of the Year. Well, I'm happy to admit something that I very rarely am forced to say. I was dead wrong. After my 53-hour completion of Death Stranding 2 on the beach, I may have just experienced the best video game I've ever played in my 30+ years of gaming. Death Stranding 2 on the beach is the first game in a long time to leave me in a multi-day dopamine-washed depression, and I couldn't be happier. What makes Death Stranding 2 better than the original? Will you enjoy Death Stranding 2 on the beach if you weren't a fan of the first game? Well, let's find out. Stay tuned for this no BS, boredom, and spoiler-free review of Death Stranding 2 on the beach. I am GreyDay. I play games. This is GreyDayGames. This is the hardest review I've sat down to write so far. After a period of digesting what I just experienced and a little bit of time to get over that post-game depression I was feeling, I think I'm ready to convey just how special this game is and why it is one of, if not the best game Hideo Kojima has ever created. Without further ado, and as always, let's start with the presentation. The graphics in Death Stranding 2 on the beach are some of the best that have ever graced a TV screen or gaming monitor. You get great-looking characters in jaw-dropping environments fighting against incredibly detailed, well-animated human and paranormal enemies, all of it pulled off to near perfection. Any visual inadequacies I found when playing the game on a base PS5 or the result of the hardware not being able to provide the requisite visual effects while maintaining 60 FPS on the nearly 5-year-old console. Because these moments did not lead to an interruption of the fluidity of gameplay, I accepted them for what they were and just resigned myself to the fact that I'll be purchasing this game again on Steam when possible. The improvements in the visuals of Death Stranding 2 on the beach compared to its predecessor are pretty impressive. Animations feel more fluid and natural, allowing players to feel a potential fall before it happens. The environments in Death Stranding 2 feel far more detailed and varied than in the first game. With the two land masses we traverse being Mexico and Australia, Sam journeys through beautifully detailed deserts, woods, snow-capped mountains, rocky terrain, all feature eye-popping detail without much popping of textures or environmental models. What really brings the environments to life is the incredible, non-ray traced global illumination system. Lighting in this game felt amazing, both beautiful and convincing, and this lent greatly to my enjoyment of the core gameplay. Another huge improvement to the graphics in Death Stranding 2 on the beach are the large-scale, user-controlled set pieces in BT engagements. Speaking on the former, there are a number of times when the players control Sam as other cutscene-style events are taking place around him. These moments are so captivating and incredibly awesome that it's a challenge to remember that you gotta keep pushing Sam towards the destination. The BT encounters, specifically the larger BT fights you stumble upon, and those that resulted from a failed attempt to navigate a BT field, they are far more visually intense than in the first game. While you'll still be subject to destabilizing tar waves and the flailing appendages of a giant BT, now BTs will throw volleys of objects such as cars your way. Even in these intense, chaotic moments, these crazy attacks animated beautifully and were an astonishing sight to behold. The newly added environmental effects in Death Stranding 2 are incredibly cool and another fine showcase of how impressive the Decima engine is in capable hands. On one of the game's first official missions, I plotted a course around an enemy encampment to cross a large river. In the distance, I saw the horizon obscured by a huge sandstorm. "I wonder if that's actually moving," I said as I sat down my controller to grab a drink. Upon returning, I realized that yes, it was in fact moving toward me, and now I have to do 3/4 of the trek in near blinding and deafening conditions. It was amazing. In a similar vein, feeling a bit frisky after hours of using the off-road truck, I wanted to test Sam's mountaineering capabilities. After plotting a reasonable course over manageable mountain peaks, equipping my Bulka exoskeleton and trekker boots, I find my journey going swimmingly. Until I can't find my journey any longer, because I can't see anything. Thank goodness for the Odra deck. To avoid being labeled a doting fanboy, I will admit there are a few cracks in the pristine graphic presentation of Death Stranding 2 on the beach. These shortcomings come in the form of sometimes unbelievable fire effects and fire-based explosions, and the sometimes ugly reflections on large bodies of water. While other imperfections do present themselves, these were the two that really stuck out to me as points of disappointment. While I have no good explanation for why the fire looks so mid, as the kids say, the simple answer for the reflections is the handicap of being forced to play on a 5-year-old console rather than my top-of-the-line brand new PC. However, it should be understood that I was never able to dwell on these flaws, for as soon as I noticed them, something interesting would happen and I'd let out an audible, who cares? The major sound improvements in Death Stranding 2 on the beach mostly come in the form of sounds associated with the new environmental effects. Deafening roaring fires, the overwhelming white noise of a torrential downpour or whiteout blizzard, each serves to create an incredibly convincing cacophony that will often leave you anxiously seeking a way out of that situation. Thanks to the improved speaker on the DualSense, Kojima Productions had a lot more freedom to incorporate controller-based sound effects throughout your gameplay. These sounds typically consist of sounds underfoot, the crunching of snow, the shifting of shrubbery or rocks underneath your feet. These sounds make so much sense, it's a wonder that this hadn't been widely utilized in other PS5 exclusives, but perhaps that's due to the downside, which we'll get into a little bit later. Aside from these improvements, you'll get what you expect from a game that has been crafted with Hideo Kojima levels of detail. Footsteps properly sync with Sam's every step. Every piece of gear at Sam's disposal sounds how you would expect it to. The sounds of buildings, terminals, player-built structures all make the world feel real. Finally, the music in Death Stranding 2 on the beach manages to surpass the first game, and that's no small achievement. While the music in Death Stranding 2 aren't the types of tracks I'd listen to on my own, they're all pretty marvelous, and I'd be lying if I said I hadn't listened to the OST on YouTube Music a number of times since completing the game. Every song seems perfectly tailored to suit the almost perfect moment they start to play. When it comes to that music timing, I wish some accounting for the mode of transportation Sam was in was taken to determine the starting point for the "You're almost there, Sam" music, as I found myself reaching my destination far before the song was finished. There's just something special about reaching your destination terminal right when the music is faded out, and that's a feeling I wish I had a couple more times throughout my gameplay. The performances in Death Stranding 2 on the beach are hands down the best I've ever seen in a video game. The cast gathers new actors in Elle Fanning, Luca Marinelli, Shioli Katsuna, and new faces quite literally, with director Fatih Akin and Mad Max legend George Miller only lending their likenesses to the game, while incredibly talented voice and motion capture artists provide their performances. Each new cast member adds a crucial element to the story's dynamic that had me genuinely caring for each of them. The acting was so good, I often found myself curious, what did that look mean? Or, they've got a strange awkwardness. What if tomorrow? Troy Baker's reprisal of the character Higgs? Higgs was a terror in the first game, he is terrifying in the second. His glam rocker take on Walton Goggins' character from Sons of Anarchy is captivating and menacing.
Same as it ever was.
He's supernatural and super pissed, but he also has a pitiful side, and that's somehow connected with me. Never before have I actually felt empathy towards such an evil and terrifying enemy. In almost any scene where you find Higgs, you find Troy Baker outshining the rest of the ensemble. Lastly, regarding the game's acting performances, I've never experienced foreshadowing from an actor's performance in a video game, but I did here. As I mentioned, the acting performances in Death Stranding 2 rival any I've seen in a video game and serve to deliver an incredible story that keeps you wanting more. It was nice then, in Death Stranding 2 on the beach, the time spent away from these greatly played characters was far more enjoyable than the first game. On that note, let's talk gameplay. At its core, the gameplay loop in Death Stranding 2 on the beach remains the same as the first game. Watch a cutscene, accept a mission, plot a course, travel to destination, deliver cargo. Also, like the first game, sometimes players are tasked with infiltrating a human enemy base to retrieve an item and return it back to the starting location. In Death Stranding 2 on the beach, we finally get the Stop the Jerks from Breathing missions. These missions are possible thanks to most of the weapons in the game being non-lethal, thus preventing any life cessation and stopping the formation of a new BT and the potential multi-megaton explosion known as a void out. With the exception of an inconvenient issue where my weapon would get stowed after a reload, the improved gunplay felt great. One complaint I can see people having is that instead of a reticle, players are given an area of possibility. The trade-off is that the excitement comes not from perfectly placed shots in a one-on-one battle, rather from overcoming seemingly insurmountable odds against enemies that outnumber, move faster, and are much harder to see than Sam. That shift of feeling, oh, I'm so screwed, to, wait, I think I have this, is so satisfying that on a few occasions I found myself intentionally triggering a big boss fight by just wandering through a BT field with no cares whatsoever. One of the ways Death Stranding 2 on the Beach improved its core gameplay is by simply providing the tools that allow for player freedom early in the game, so that you can start playing how you want sooner. Because of this early access to vehicles, exoskeletons, and weaponry, I was able to realize how improved the vehicle handling was and really fell in love with the I wonder if my off-road could make it down this slope style of traversal. This focus on vehicle traversal made the moments where I was forced to go it on foot so much more enjoyable. Both of the user-controlled vehicles in Death Stranding 2 on the Beach are big improvements over the first game. They control better, are easier to get in and out of, and it can be crafted with helpful upgrades such as BT and human stopping weaponry, a sticky cannon that will shoot out and grab lost cargo for you to deliver. The downside to the sticky cannon is that when you're slowly traversing a BT field, nothing is more unnerving than hearing a random beep 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 before the cannon fires off and grabs a package you didn't realize was there because you're trying not to be the catalyst for a population wiping void out. The gameplay in Death Stranding 2 on the Beach is more of the same, but it's also more than the same. There's a certain something that I, for the life of me, just can't figure out how to put into words. The simple explanation is, I suffered through the missions of the first Death Stranding to get to the addictive, engrossing story. My only regret when heading out for a new location in Death Stranding 2 was that I would be leaving behind my friends and colleagues aboard the Magellan until they joined me at the next step along the newly expanded chiral network. The gameplay in Death Stranding 2 on the Beach is much improved, but in a game so great, so near perfection, it remains the weakest part of the package. Not because it's insufficient in any way, but rather it is overshadowed by the previously discussed presentation and the gut-wrenching, heart-pounding, emotional roller coaster of the game's story. I'm a sucker for a Hideo Kojima story. For me, I always know what I'm gonna get. Lengthy cutscenes that throw tons of information at you, half of which makes little to no sense, lots of metaphors wrapped in enigmas tied together with riddles. You then get to spend the gameplay loop trying to figure out what the hell just happened until the next cutscene. To my great satisfaction, this is what we get with Death Stranding 2 on the Beach. While perhaps slightly less eccentric than the first game, or perhaps more properly explained along the way, Death Stranding 2 on the Beach throws so much at the player. This time around though, I felt the story in Death Stranding 2 did a better job explaining things so that the information dumps are comprehensible at the time rather than way later in the game. While there are huge revelations at the end of the game's campaign, Death Stranding 2 does a better job of providing a better pace for the emotional ups and downs than the first game. Regarding emotions, through my 53 hours playing Death Stranding 2 on the Beach, I yelled, I laughed, I cried. I cried some more. I spent 10 minutes weeping towards the end of the game, not because I was sad, but because the game just threw me into the most beautiful, peaceful walk after an incredibly uplifting moment that had just end-capped an intense combat sequence. It was, call me a wuss, call me a baby, that's okay. It's amazing to have a video game provoke such an emotional response, and the story of Death Stranding 2 on the Beach triggered all of those emotions multiple times. I only pray that I develop some form of amnesia prior to the PC release so I can experience this story fresh, as if for the first time. Much like Clair Obscur Expedition 33 before it, Death Stranding 2's story was so good that I was emotionally wiped for days after completing the game. My time with these characters was over. All that remained was the uncertainty of when a game would once again deliver such an experience. It's an emptiness I'm still kind of getting over, but it's one that I'm grateful for and anxious to experience again. As much as I would love to go into specific things that make the story in Death Stranding 2 so special, I can't bring myself to ruin even one moment for any future player. I've intentionally edited this video to make sure that nothing you see will make any sense other than, oh damn, that looks cool. If you want story details, if you want to ruin it for yourself, do so on your own time on a different channel. I strongly urge you not to though. Because I can find a way to complain about anything, here are some of the things that I feel keep Death Stranding 2 on the Beach from being a perfect video game. There are a handful of little annoyances that got under my skin while completing Death Stranding 2 on the Beach. For starters, When plotting a course, it was incredibly annoying how often my cursor would snap to another player's sign marker or something that I may have been trying to avoid. In one of the game's missions, I had to disable a machine by pressing and holding the square button. This machine was on the second floor, right in front of a railing you can hop over if you press, you guessed it, square. This led to a very intense moment with Robot Samurai, who wanted to stop my breathing. They all had a great laugh as they witnessed Sam throwing himself and his weapons off the second-story balcony. I was a little pissed. The aforementioned weapon stowage issues were annoying, and the filler cutscenes of traveling to your room or to the shower can become grating around hour 40. Last of the minor gripes is that when playing Death Stranding 2 on the beach with my DualSense Edge controller, I couldn't get more than 2 hours of battery out of it, forcing me to play plugged in. A minor gripe, but annoying nonetheless. Perhaps this is why you don't see many PS5 games putting so much sound through the controller. My biggest complaint, and this will always be my biggest complaint, is console exclusivity. It is very frustrating that so many people will have to miss the wave of this pop culture moment because they see the foolishness in buying a 5-year-old console when they already have a gaming PC, and when Sony's already talking about the PS6. I think that Death Stranding 2 goes a step further than the first in being a game that might actually serve as therapy for some, inspiration for others, and maybe even a mind-opening experience for those who don't typically enjoy having to figure things out or feel emotions. Sure, I'm a bit irritated that my only first experience playing Death Stranding 2 on the beach is on a device that isn't even as powerful as my laptop. I'm more disappointed that a game this good just won't be on certain players' lists until the PS5 exclusivity period ends. One last gripe, no matter how fitting, I hate the subtitle. Even now, it still elicits memories of Dead or Alive beach volleyball, which, hey, has anyone got Kojima's number? Let's make this a thing. I went into Death Stranding 2 on the beach with high expectations. I expected beautiful visuals, great acting, a mind-bending story surrounding technically sound gameplay that I would push through to get to the big story payoff. What we got was a level higher than expected, with improved gameplay which, for me, did not have me wanting to just get it over with this time around. The story, the visuals, the characters, the relationships, the twists and turns in Death Stranding 2 on the beach place it as one of the best, if not the best games I've ever had the joy to play. But would I recommend it for you? If you're a player who found the first game intriguing, but just couldn't get past the 10-hour mark of the original Death Stranding, I'd recommend this game. If you're a player drawn to well-developed characters that establish meaningful and believable relationships, I'd recommend Death Stranding 2 on the beach to you. If you're a fan of cozy games, but also sometimes feel like causing a little chaos, I'd recommend DS2 to you. If you enjoy complex stories that make you think, cry, laugh, think some more, cry some more, Death Stranding 2 on the beach needs to be part of your life right now. If you're just too cool for any game that doesn't keep score of your headshots and KD ratio, you might want to skip this one. If you're confident that you're the best person you could ever be, don't like to feel things, and don't like to be bogged down with contemplative thinking during your gameplay sessions, you're probably better off sticking with the games you're accustomed to. You know, usually these "who is it for" segments are way easier, but with my bias of having completed the first and second games and having fell in love with the series 15 hours into the sequel, I feel that everyone could enjoy Death Stranding 2 on the beach, if only they were to allow themselves the opportunity. I loved Clair Obscur Expedition 33 so much that I genuinely didn't think that even a game made by Hideo Kojima could surpass it. Then I experienced the insane polish, attention to detail, immersive and suspense-laden story, lovable and hateable characters, and just how clean and precise the execution was of all these elements. And Death Stranding 2 on the beach dethroned Clair Obscur Expedition 33 as my 2025 Game of the Year. While nearly perfect and definitely at the top of my best games of all time list, Death Stranding 2 on the beach gets a small deduction for a couple of minor patchable control issues and for being a PS5 exclusive, which leaves my current 2025 Game of the Year with an incredible score of 9.75. If you enjoyed anything you saw here, a like and a subscribe helps me achieve my goal of getting review copies of games so that these reviews get to you when they matter. You know, when the game launches. If you hated what you saw and heard, let me know that too. I want to improve with each game review I put out, and the only way I can do that is to know what isn't jiving with you. I'm currently working through Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and I'll be checking out Ghost of Yotai and Donkey Kong Bonanza in the coming weeks. As always, I'll have reviews based upon full completions of the game on normal difficulty, unlike the other bigger and far more successful sources on YouTube. Don't forget to check out the content creator group I co-founded, The Odd Gamers. Check out the members, join the Discord, find out more at theoddgamers.com. Until next time. I am GreyDay. I play games. This is